My name is Valerie Cabral, and I am the Senior Director of Alumni Relations at NYU Tandon School of Engineering in the terrific borough of Brooklyn. Welcome this evening. I'd like to begin the program by inviting our esteemed moderator and our two speakers up to the podium. Our moderator this evening is Dr. Ire Adele, and our guest speakers are Joe Landolina and Courtney Flood. Please. So before we actually get started, I also have to thank the house, Cresilon, for opening up the doors to us. As you can imagine, it takes a lot to put on an event like this, but we've had a fabulous space to work with today. So I'd like to personally thank Joe and Courtney and the entire Cresilon team who have gone above and beyond to make us feel very well healed here. Ire is the Senior Vice Dean of NYU Tandon, as well as our Allstat Lord Mark, Professor of Chemical and Biomolecular Engineering. Ire joined us in 2018 from the University of Minnesota, where he led the Department of Chemical Engineering and Materials Science. His research encompasses electronic, optoelectronic, magnetic, and catalytic materials synthesis, material synthesis, and characterization, and is motivated by both fundamental questions and applications such as sustainable solar to electric energy conversion using solar cells. He holds several patents, as well as is a fellow of the American Vacuum Society, editor-in-chief of the Journal of Vacuum Science and Technology, and the author of more than 200 scholarly articles. In addition to his work in our lab, he is widely recognized as a dedicated teacher and mentor. We are very lucky to have him. Please welcome Ire Adele.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. This is so exciting. Of course, the difference between my patents and Cresilon and Joe's patents is that mine are not very useful and they don't save lives, but they do for Cresilon. How many of you know Rick Rubin? Any music fans here? So Rick Rubin founded Def Jam Records in his NYU dorm room. So that's what he's known for. But I'd argue that at Candid, we have an even more impressive dorm room startup story, and that of Joe Landolina. Let's watch a short film about how the PAA 2024 Distinguished Alumni Awardee Joe Landolina and NYU Alumni Association 2025 Distinguished Young Alumni Awardee founded Cresilon while still in his teens and living in Othmer Hall. I think you'll see why we consider him rock star biochemist, that we're very proud to count him as an alum. Let's watch the movie.
We founded Cresilon on the mission of saving lives. When I got to NYU, we had this idea, but it was just an idea on paper, which was based on a polymer composite that I discovered while I was playing around in the lab that would stick to skin and not let go. And I thought, what if you could use that to stop a bleeding bullet wound, inject it into a bullet wound, and at least be able to move a patient from point A to point B.
Think about this. He's a freshman at NYU, 17. He's already mixing polymers because he's realized that mixtures of these materials can actually stop bleeding. He perseveres and eventually comes up with a formulation that allows him to stop bleeding in animals.
Our technology forms a viscous gel, and so this gel can be injected onto something that's bleeding. It instantly creates a mechanical barrier against bleeding and then allows the patient to produce their own blood clot underneath. And so if you take the gel away, what's left behind is the patient's own clot. And today, VetaGel has been used to save the life of over 65,000 pets in 34 countries.
Joe, in many respects, represents what we want our students to become at the Tandon School of Engineering. Our students are individuals who are curious, they are independent, they are problem solvers, they care about others, they want to find solutions that help others.
When I got to NYU, Tandon's slogan at the time was I²E, which was invention, innovation, and entrepreneurship. So that environment allowed us to get the resources that we needed. It allowed the university to take a bet on effectively kids at the time. And by the time that I graduated, we had a fully working prototype. So over the years, we've raised into the 9 figures of venture capital. We've hired a number of NYU alumni throughout our organization. And so it's great to see this go full circle.
FDA approval of TraumaGel is a huge milestone. And that, I like to think, reflects on the way of thinking that Joe developed while he was a student at Tandon.
So with the clearance of TraumaGel by FDA back in August of last year, that allowed us for the first time to exercise that goal of saving human lives. And in early October, we got that first call of the first human life that was saved by the product. And nowadays, looking back at that, and we're getting several lives saved daily. So it's just amazing to see what was an idea in a dorm room turn into something that is actually tangibly impacting patient lives for the better.
Joe's accomplishments is an example of how a chemistry can be translated into a cure that will change the world.
Great film, but I have one quibble about that film. I'd like to have included Courtney in there too. And maybe we can make another one. How about it, Sayaf? Her CD is absolutely amazing, so I want to just fill you in a little bit. As Vice President of Business Development at LBD Specialties, Courtney was the youngest operating executive in the nationwide chemical distribution industry. That's an amazing achievement. She recently launched her own strategic advisory firm, Fulham, and it's really no surprise that American Institute of Chemical Engineers named her to its prestigious 35 under 35 list for young trailblazers. What I do find surprising is that she has any spare time at all. She still manages to support the causes that are important to her. That includes serving as a trustee of nonprofit Chemists Club and sitting on the advisory board of the Brooklyn Museum. And she recently agreed to join NYU Tandon's advisory board, and we couldn't be prouder to have her. And we'll be having our first meeting next week. I'm looking forward to that. So some people might think of Jay-Z and Beyonce as the Brooklyn's most important power couple. I disagree. I think Joe and Courtney are right up there with them, if not higher. I'm just so looking forward to just sitting down with you and chatting about your journey, where you came from and where you're going, and your time at Tandon. So I have some questions that I will ask, and then we'll take some question from the audience as well. So for both of you, and anyone can start, how did your time at Tandon prepare you for your respective career paths? And before I ask that, let me say that I happened to be not while you were there, and I regret that I didn't get a chance to teach you, but chemical engineering, chemical and biomolecular engineering department, I was the chair of that department. So I'm doubly proud that you came from that department. So if you could tell us, how did your time at Tandon prepare you for your respective career paths?
In every possible way, right? So we talk about Brooklyn being our roots, but we have alumni and people here from every one of NYU's schools. How many people attended Tandon when it was still known as Brooklyn Poly? Yeah. So a lot of you know that history. And when I was an undergraduate at Tandon, I worked in the Office of Alumni Relations and got to learn a lot about the rich history of the school, which was founded in 1854. It's one of the first schools in the United States that was accredited to teach engineering, and it had the most rich heritage to become engineers. Roland Stefendel's in the back. He's one of my earliest mentors and an alum of what was Brooklyn Poly. And he was taught by Professor Herman Mark, who's considered the father of polymer chemistry. There is no better ecosystem to learn chemical engineering and no better way to replant the roots of Poly back to NYU, which is the world's largest private research university. And so there's no way to say how did Tandon prepare us, because you can trim leaves and you can repot a plant, but you can't get rid of the roots. And Tandon formed our roots.
And for me, I think coming into Tandon at the time that we did, and so I applied to Poly, and it became NYU in the process while I was in undergrad, and it was a really interesting time because, like I said in the video, the slogan of NYU Poly at the time was I²E. It was invention, innovation, and entrepreneurship, and there was this amazing focus on entrepreneurship and starting up, and specifically with the collaboration between the Stern School of Business and the School of Engineering. And so through our coursework and through Professor Leffer's coursework, which he's sitting there in the back, it really pushed us to start thinking about how we can start a business. Because I didn't want to be an entrepreneur, I wanted to be a surgeon. And so my goal was get a chemical engineering degree and then go to medical school and just follow the process all the way through. And I think it was during freshman orientation, and so this was still in August of my freshman year, that we got that poke to start the business. And so from the very beginning, that culture of entrepreneurship carried through, and it made Cresilon into what it is today.
It's, you're right in that transition and the evolution. It's great to see that your trajectory evolved just like Brooklyn Poly's evolved. You mentioned Herman Mark. Just going to take a few minutes to tell you a story that makes my, see if I can do it without crying. But Herman Mark had a son, Peter Mark, who passed away when he was very young. And he was the editor-in-chief of Journal of Vacuum Science and Technology. And in his name, there was an award established. So I happen to be a 1999 recipient of that award. And I'm also now the editor-in-chief of that same journal. So when I moved to 7th floor, I hung up the award named after his son on the wall, and someone came and told me, Herman Mark's lab and office used to be around here. There's such a rich history, and it carries. It's motivating. So anyway, this is about you, so I'm going to ask you your next question. What is the most valuable thing you learned at Tandon? Most valuable. One.
So, you know what? It's none of the material, right? And so I say this all the time, and it's why I skew, or I have a bias towards hiring engineers. And sorry to my employees who are here who aren't engineers, but because engineering, in my opinion, or engineering education is not about what you learn in the class. It's about how you learn. It's about the process. And that process of engineering is applicable to anything. It's applicable, obviously, to designing a process, but it's also equally applicable to the world of business. It's equally applicable to diplomacy and international relations and all the things that you need as you build a business. And so that process, that way of thinking that comes with being an engineer is the most important thing that I took away, and that many of our colleagues here at Cresilon did as well.
And you don't stop learning, right? You keep learning, and how to learn is a part of the process. What about you, Court?
Well, that learning isn't linear, right? So, we're engineers who married each other. We met each other in Othmer Hall. So, of course, we think similarly, and we look at life and we look at business as process. That's what we learned. And I'm having so much fun seeing everyone here because Professor Levicki is here. One of the first times Joe and I met each other was sitting next to one another in Professor Levicki's Intro to Chemical Engineering class. And one of the first questions he asks in that class is, how do you scale a system? And unlike a cake, if you want something double the size, you can't double the number of eggs that you put in. And so as we've built our careers, as we've built our businesses, hard work in doesn't always mean equal results out. And so even if we forget the Navier-Stokes equation, we can remember that.
I can just see you like you were very proud. Absolutely. A little bit different question again to both of you. What is one mistake that you made early on that taught you the most?
So for me, it's an interesting one because it's about growing too quickly. And so I remember I was in Othmer Hall, and we had this experiment that we set up. And so we were trying to show that the product worked. And so I went to a local butcher on Smith Street in Cobble Hill, and I got fresh blood and we got fresh meat, and we hooked it up into an aquarium pump, and we made it bleed, and we put the product on, and it stops instantly. And we filmed it on an iPhone 2 or whatever was out at the time. And I posted this video on my Facebook page because, again, it was 2012. And I had a friend who, again, 2012, said, "Joe, I have a Tumblr, and do you mind if I put this video up on Tumblr?" And it went viral. It had over 140 million views on it. And so we went from basically two idiots in a dorm room to being on Swedish talk shows. And there was one midterms week where there was a film crew that turned up in Rogers Hall and forced their way into an interview with me. And so we just got this incredible virality where the business grew. We got thousands of potential investors that came to us, and we needed lab space. And so we took this old 1930 schoolhouse that we found on Craigslist, and we converted it into clean rooms that we built ourselves. And we were terrible students from that time forward because we would commute from our office to classes and back. And we decided that in a 10-foot by 10-foot clean room, we were going to manufacture enough VeterGel to supply the world. And we had orders from over 40% of all veterinarians in the country on that product, and orders from huge customers in Europe. And very quickly we realized as we built our first batch that we couldn't do it, right? There was no way to build a product of quality in a 10-foot by 10-foot room. And so one of the most difficult decisions that I ever had to make was on the eve of that launch, we pulled the plug. So this is in 2015. We decided we couldn't do it the right way. And if we were going to do it, we had to do it the right way. And so we decided we're not going to launch. We went back to our investors and we asked for 10 times the amount of money that we had just raised. And to our surprise, they said yes. And so we built the factory that you'll see upstairs. And so we started the construction of the clean rooms upstairs in 2015. And it took us another 5 years to get to launch, which was not fun for me. It was not fun for our team, but it gave us a product that we could make at the level of quality that the market deserves.
I don't know about you, but I'm still looking for a mistake.
You're right. This is why we call Joe the 15-year overnight success with the recent FDA approval.
What about you, Courtney?
Well, I'm looking at Hassan Ahmad in the back. Hassan is the COO of Cresilon. He built everything that you see here. He is the engineer's engineer. He was Mr. NYU on campus. And Hassan actually introduced us in Othmer Hall, and we were across the hall when Joe was doing that test on VeterGel and making what maybe felt like big decisions without having all of the information. And so my mistakes are really annoying to talk about because they're the obvious ones. But the obvious ones are the simplest. I think our biggest strengths are also our biggest weaknesses. And that means that our biggest mistakes are also our biggest lessons. And so, like Joe, I moved very quickly through my career. You mentioned my last role, but I actually started college at 14. I was working full-time by 19, and my goal was to finish as quickly as possible, to follow the paths that had been set forward for me. And it's through that I skipped a lot of foundational education. I took organic chemistry twice. Hassan helped me through differential equations 3 times, because when you move that quickly, you forget the first principles. And so you can't build this if you say you're going to do it in 2 years. It takes 15 because those gaps have to be plugged.
That's amazing. 14? I was just thinking what I was doing at 14. That's actually a perfect segue to my my next question. How do you think about work-life balance? Has it changed over time? Is it changing? We talked about people retiring at 30 and so right before.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that the both the upside and the downside to being an entrepreneur is that work-life balance gets blurred. I mean, when you have something that you're so truly passionate about, work becomes fun, but also everything becomes work, right? You're always on, you're always required to do this. And Courtney always jokes that she has a photo album of me taking important phone calls on places where we were supposed to be on vacation. And so in my mind, work-life balance came as I grew through this business, right? It's not about making sure that every one day is balanced or every 1 week is balanced, but that you find the time for family, that you build it in, right? I mean, we can travel together to see sites or customers around the world and make it something that's fun or a bit of vacation in as well. And so it's about being aware and conscious over a long period of time, right? Over the course of a year, can you find that balance as opposed to in a day? Because this type of job doesn't lend itself well to a reproducible schedule that fits neatly into a 9 to 5.
I think being passionate about what you're doing helps. You don't look at it almost like work. I mean, some things are, but it was important.
Well, and those passions can change. What feels like balance 1 week or 1 month or 1 year is not the same as what balance looks like a year later. Sometimes we need to balance the equation for a different variable. Sometimes we didn't have the feedback loop for the variables that we thought we needed. And so even if you can't have it all in one day, and I mean, we like to sit down and look back and say, what are we missing this year, right? What wasn't here? But you talk about retiring at 30. I took my first retirement last year when I turned 30 because I'd just done a private equity roll-up of 7 businesses. I was running commercial for the country's largest chemical distributor, was having a blast until I wasn't. And I said, this felt like balance, but now it's not. And that's okay. So I took a year to travel the world, to read, to write, to study the things that absolutely did not interest me in college, right? I combed the NYU philosophy department website and I tried to read off of every syllabus that was there. I didn't want to take those classes when I was a teenager. It feels more balanced now. So the long answer to your question is what we're looking for doesn't change, but how we do it does.
Yeah, absolutely true. Are there things you're still figuring out, struggling?
Of course. So I say this all the time, which is that startups, especially companies like Cresilon, are expected to and do grow exponentially, but it's irresponsible to expect that people grow exponentially, right? People at best grow linearly, and that has to be built in, right? And that's true for myself, and that's true for anybody that comes into this organization. And so the skills that worked in the 2 idiots in a dorm room phase aren't the same skills that work at a 5-person scale or a 10-person scale or a 100-person scale, or that will work at a 500-person scale. And so I think that's my favorite thing about this type of business is that I love solving problems. I'm an engineer at heart, but my pet peeve is solving that same problem twice. And so at least with this job, I get a different challenge every day, and it forces me to grow, which is great.
I think about the same thing, but after having taken a year off and reading philosophy, please forgive me if my answer to your question is just a tad bit existential.
Anybody should do that.
I agree. I think people should retire early and retire often. But one of the... I think we teach the things that we're most trying to learn ourselves. And one of the things that I've been thinking about lately is, look, we have a lot of different backgrounds in this room. We have NYU dentists, lawyers, doctors, actors, and engineers. But when I look at what Joe and his team and Hassan have built here at Cresilon, it is a solution to a bioengineering problem. Bioengineering is applied chemical engineering. Chemical engineering is applied mechanical engineering. Mechanical engineering is applied physics. Physics is applied mathematics. And mathematics is applied philosophy. It sounds crazy, but that's what we're doing every day. Every single one of us, no matter what we're going out and doing in the world, what we're trying to find in that work-life balance, we're trying to solve those problems. And so what I'm still trying to figure out is how do we find that shared language when we have many different people in a room, not just engineers, to solve problems from different standpoints, but to find the shared language at the very root.
Yeah, I absolutely. The big challenges don't present themselves to a single discipline. You have to have viewpoint and diversity of viewpoints and angles to solve them. Along those lines, you follow the business that you're in, and what about other tech trends? What do you see in the future that's going to be important? You know, some keywords are the AI, of course, and so what is emerging in your opinion that we should be looking out for?
Sure. This might be a drier answer than you were expecting for this question, but so I'm not going to talk about AI because everybody talks about AI. I'm going to talk about funding trends, especially around the innovation economy and startups, because one thing that I've noticed is that the traditional venture capital model that I came up in and a lot of the startups in my cohort came up in really no longer works, right? The VC landscape is very different today than it was a decade ago and very different than it was 2 or 3 decades ago. And the major trend that I'm seeing here is a shift especially in the earliest stages of business, from institutional investors like venture capitalists coming in early into companies, and that burden is being shifted off to the individual investor, to the angel investor. And that's becoming more and more pronounced, and especially in life sciences. And this year was, I believe since 2021, the worst venture year ever. And so that type of fundraising, right, that allows for companies like Cresilon to come about is changing, at least, for admitting the traditional sources that you would find no longer exist. And it's getting placed off on individual investors or on angel investors to fund the company through those earliest stages. And it's interesting because Cresilon, maybe surprisingly, doesn't have a major institutional backer. I mean, we've raised well into the 9 figures, and so 150, close to $200 million in funding. It's very rare for there not to be one big VC that has a big piece of that. Most of our investors are angel investors and family offices that just grew with the business. And that was unique. I mean, I used to get a lot of negative comments about that today, and now I'm getting a lot of positive comments about that because that's where the funding landscape has shifted to. And so I just think it's interesting for those of you out there who are here today because you're interested in starting an early stage business. But that landscape is changing. It's changing quickly, and it's something to keep an eye on.
That's interesting. Do you think that was because your story, your product, the value was so compelling that it attracted so many diverse, smaller investors than one investor?
So what I always say is that the easiest way to raise money is to have a 20-second GIF. No audio, no text. If you can describe in 20 seconds of video what your product does, what your company does, and why it's worth something to the world, then you'll have a very easy time raising money. And we got very lucky that we can stop a bleed in 20 seconds, and you don't need to know what a bleed is or why it's bad or what our product does to know that it's important and that it will have an impact somewhere. And that allowed us in the very early stages to raise capital. But I think that we also got very lucky, right? I mean, we got lucky that we had angel investors that invested a small amount that were able to then grow with us and continue to double down. And we had no way of vetting that when we were kids. We just happened to get lucky. And what we did do, though, was we interviewed every investor before we allowed them to invest. And we made sure that they fit with us before. And we needed the money. But we wanted to make sure that we didn't allow a single investor in that didn't believe in the mission and that wasn't behind what we were trying to build here. And I think that maybe tip that luck in our favor, but still you need some luck.
Very interesting difference. Courtney, what about you? You have a similar but different background, different industry.
Yeah.
Well, what else? What do you see?
Right. Well, I've spent my career in specialty chemicals, right? So everything from the clothes you're wearing, the food we're eating, the paint on the ceiling, they're all made of chemicals. It's the world's largest manufacturing industry. But a lot of us don't think about that day to day. More than 25% of the US GDP is directly tied to the chemical industry. And some numbers go as high as 95% of US GDP are indirectly tied within 3 to 6 steps, kind of the Kevin Bacon of chemicals, to the chemical industry. So I'll go back to my last answer. How do we get all the way to the root of those supply chains? If you're watching the news today, you're probably seeing a lot of headlines about rare earth minerals and mining rights globally. During COVID, if you saw your orders go from 2 weeks to 2 months and you saw shipping containers backed up at the Port of Long Beach in California, if you're holding a phone or you've ever used technology in your life, there are semiconductors, chips in that technology. Every single one of those chips requires more than 500 unique chemicals. And each of those chemicals has a global supply chain ping-ponging around the world. So what am I looking at? I'm looking at those macro trends and I'm connecting everything back to each other. I'm trying to connect the dots and find shared language.
It was very interesting also to hear about your supply chain that goes around the world and ends up on the second floor. So I'm going to change the subject a little bit. So I love receiving emails from former students. I call them the life updates. I have a folder on my Google called the life updates. They'll send an email, I don't know, prompted by what. Maybe 5 years ago they graduated, and they'll say, I don't know if you would remember me, but I'm doing this, that, and the other. It just energizes. That's how a mentor feels. So I'm curious, were there any mentors or resources that made a critical difference to you that you remember that maybe you should tomorrow email and give them an update?
I mean, I'll do you one better. We invited most of them to be in this room tonight, and so we've named a few of them in the room. I mean, from Professor Leffer, who helped us start Cresilon. So Mike Blumenfeld is. I'm not gonna out your age, but Mike, 15 years ago during the NYU competition, was assigned to Cresilon as a mentor. There were 4 mentors that were assigned to us. 3 of them told us, give up, you're too young, you can't start a biotech company, and Mike stuck around, and he's been here for every event, every team town hall, every holiday party for the better part of 15 years. And so I can't name every mentor and advisor that we've had, but it's about building that community. For us, that community started at NYU, but it's also about making sure that group of mentors and advisors grows and changes with the business, and that's okay too.
And that those relationships go 2 ways. Every human relationship goes 2 ways. You're learning and you're teaching. And I think that's so important to keep in mind in mentorship. At NYU, I was really lucky. I've called Rowan out a few times because I think he's personally responsible for the employment or the first job of at least 100 NYU alumni. I don't think I'm over exaggerating that. He's connected dots that no others have in a huge industry. And that was part of the power of mentorship that kept me coming back to organizations like the Chemist Club. And finding new mentors along the way. It doesn't have to be formal. You don't have to name it that. But if you're going to sit like E-Ray suggested and think about some of these mentors, I like to give myself a challenge that at least once a day, every time I think of someone, I text them immediately because otherwise it's going to end up on my to-do list. Those can be people that you've mentored indirectly. And those relationships take a long time to grow, and you don't know what'll come from them.
Yeah. So I have some individual questions for you. Let me start with Courtney. I mean, youngest executive in the business. How did you have to build a network? How did you do it? How did you do it?
So my very first job, I was 19 years old. A company called Brenntag, a large German company. It's the world's largest chemical distribution company, recruited me out of Tandon. They moved me to Pennsylvania. They gave me a company car, and I was a New Yorker. I'd never driven before my first day. And for the first ever company holiday party, they had a tradition of booking out the local casino for a few hundred people to fly in. That entire holiday party had to be moved because of me, because I wasn't old enough to be on the casino floor. There are ways to lean into that and try to shake that off. But acknowledging what that was and asking for help was also important. Every move I've ever made in my career has come through my network. Early on, I put in a lot of LinkedIn applications and sent a lot of messages, but every move I've ever made has come from someone like you suggested, picking up the phone and saying, hey, I thought of you. Or me picking up the phone and doing the same. You don't have to click with every single person or follow up with every single person, but building those relationships pays back years later. And 11 years out of school, I'm just starting to see some of those come to fruition, and I hope some of those will be revealed for years to come.
I find that fascinating and unbelievable. I do. Joe, to you, studying a business, there's uncertainty. How do you handle that? And what advice would you have to somebody who's looking to start a business?
So I think I was lucky because as a student, you don't have much to lose. So you could take as much risk as you want to, and worst case happens, you're a student again. And so what I always say is that entrepreneurship is like a roller coaster, right? You have the highest of highs where you feel like you're on top of the world, and then there's a paragraph in Phil Knight's book, Shoe Dog, who's the founder of Nike, where he talks about on the eve of his IPO, he had to take a second mortgage on his house just to pay payroll. And there are parts of this business where I learned very intimately the time between an incoming wire and the outgoing wire to payroll, and 48 minutes, by the way. And so that uncertainty doesn't get easier with time, but it does by communicating, by being open, by surrounding yourself with a team that can support you, that can help you through it. And thankfully, as the business gets more stable, right, those oscillations, instead of happening daily, happen over long periods of time, and that becomes more palatable. And so my advice to anyone that starts a business is this: the only way to get through it is to have true passion in what you're doing, right? There are so many people, especially students, that come to me and they say, Joe, I want to be an entrepreneur. But I want to do, this or that or something else, right? And actually, Professor Leffer and I had this conversation 15 years ago. And I went to him and I said, hey, I have this great idea. I love it, but it's too hard. I can't start a biotech company. I'm a kid. And so here are 3 other things that I could start a company with. And his advice to me was, close your eyes, imagine yourself at your retirement party. Can you retire from this idea? Or can you retire from the original idea that you had? And it gets back to this idea that if you don't have true passion, if you don't believe in it, if you're just trying to start a company for the sake of it, you won't be able to weather the ups and downs of the journey. So you need to be truly passionate about what you do.
Yeah, that's the key, I think, too. So I don't want to monopolize your time. I think we're going to open up to questions from the audience, and Valerie is going to have a mic. And maybe if you have a question for Courtney and/or Joe, both of them.
Hi, Joe and Courtney. My name is Simon. You guys have a fantastic product.
Yeah.
I just have a question for you. I learned that in the last 100 years, there's only 43 companies in the S&P 500 that have been in business for over 100 years. So what are your strategies to ensure that you remain competitive for, in the long term?
Sure. I mean, from my perspective, it's 2 things, right? So the first thing is you need to build a product that customers want, first and foremost, right? If you're building a product because it's cool or because you enjoy the engineering of it, it's not going to solve the need of the customer. You have to keep the customer involved all the way through. And then the second thing may not be the answer that you want to hear, but you can't be married to any one outcome. That means that, right, the reason why only 43 companies in the last 100 years have stayed independent is not because the rest have all gone into business, but because there's been consolidation. Right, and it may be better for the business that Cresilon doesn't exist in this state at some point in the future, right? That's not what it is today, but you have to do what's best for the business and what's best for the product and what's best for your stakeholders at all times.
First of all, congratulations again. We are so proud of you. You know, we awarded you the Distinguished Alumni Award, and you're the youngest one ever to receive it. And you're going to bypass the astronauts and the Nobel laureates and so on. But what struck me when we started reading about you before is the fundamental chemistry or the technology that you have is really more fundamental than just one product or one application. Can you talk a little bit about where that could be going?
Yeah, of course. I mean, so at the root of it, what we're making is a blend of two polymers, right? Things that come out of algae, basically long chains of sugar, that go into a patient, into a body, and they stay where you want it to stay until you don't, and then it falls off again, or it gets absorbed and gets absorbed into the system. And what we're using that for today is stopping bleeding. But what's interesting about the ramifications of where it can go is if you think about drug delivery, or being able to get a compound somewhere and have it be localized and not spread out throughout the patient, that could be a potential application. If you can think about wound healing or wound closure. And really, for us at Cresilon, we've bitten off a lot with the problem of stopping bleeding. It's a pretty challenging challenge or problem to solve. But a one-product company isn't a company. And so one of the things that we're most excited for, you can see I have a lot more lab space here than we just need to support ongoing production, right? Most of what we have here is looking at what comes next and how to build a product pipeline from where we go.
Mm-hmm. So I have two questions, actually. I am fascinated by what's in a name. Can you tell us a little bit about how you chose the name of the company Cresilon, and considering how Industry City has evolved into what it is today, 10 years ago, how did you choose Industry City to be the home of Cresilon?
So I hate this story. I still get bitter about it. But no. It's fun to tell. So I was a student of Latin. And so when I was a 17-year-old naming a company or naming an academic project for a competition, because I didn't think this was going anywhere, I was scrolling through a Latin dictionary and I found this phrase, sui generis, meaning of its own kind. And I love that tagline, of its own kind, because actually that's still the tagline of Cresilon today. It's something that we take to heart because we couldn't build things the way that Big Pharma did because we were kids, and we had to be a lot more innovative and different through that. And so the original name of the company was Suneris, and then we didn't realize that things would blow up and we would be doing business all over the world and that we'd be in the press. And we went from being an idea in a dorm room to on news channels in a bunch of different languages. And we got sued everywhere because we hadn't set the trademarks up properly. And so we had this crossroads, which was effectively, do we want to use investor dollars to fight lawsuits in 3 different countries? Or do we want to change the name? And so Isaac, my co-founder, and Isaac was a Stern School of Business graduate. We decided we were going to go up to the roof of my apartment building. We were going to stay there, and we weren't going to come back down until we'd come up with a name. It was our little mini conclave. And we used the same concept, but at the time we were joking around about how hedge funds are named. And so we used a Hebrew root and an Italian root, which is our two backgrounds, meaning growing oak tree. And that's where Cresilon comes from. But most importantly, the .com URL was available. And after we bought a small company in France, we were able to secure global rights for it. And so in 2016, we changed our name to Cresilon. And it's still growing on me, but now I love the name Cresilon. Yes, and so I see is interesting because when I was growing up, this building or this site here was in disrepair. Right, and so Industry City has done an excellent job. Now, it wasn't this when we first started looking. So remember, my first building was 18th Street and 3rd Avenue. So up here, and when we grew out of our space and we had that issue where we needed more manufacturing, we realized that we needed something where our current team could support. So we started looking around, and in the entire city of New York, having a blend of column sizes that were narrow, and as you go upstairs, columns in New York buildings, they taper, and so the columns upstairs are much more narrow. But imagine if you build a clean room, you want to build a clean room ideally in an aircraft hangar, right? You want wide open spaces, no columns, with a catwalk over top so you can service it. You can't do that in New York. It just doesn't exist. And so you want tall ceilings, narrow columns, decent column spacing, and a floor that can hold the load of what you're looking for. That's also why we have penthouse space for our manufacturing, because in New York, the highest ceiling heights are on the top floor, and we can use the roof for equipment that penetrates through the ceiling. And so this ended up being one of only 3 campuses in the entire city that could support this type of manufacturing, and it was in our backyard. Yeah.
Hi. We'd like to invest in you guys. Do you guys plan to go public soon?
I am trying to stay private as long as I possibly can, unfortunately.
One last question. So I'm interested in the ideas which you presented about having to have many disciplines to solve a problem. And I'm wondering, number one, if in Cresilon you have hired people of different disciplines, but also have you thought about, because I've thought about what kind of languages do we use when we're trained in one area to speak to other scientists, other entrepreneurs, other,
Mm-hmm. Well, let me tackle that from a general perspective first. Every single one of you works with thousands of chemicals every day. It's the first thing you use when you wake up in the morning and the last thing you use before you go to bed. Your toothpaste, your soap, your shampoo. Your water is dihydrogen monoxide. When we work in the world of chemicals, we have to translate that for different audiences. What we call vitamin B2 on the back of an ingredient label is riboflavin, right? And so it takes time, and it takes storytelling. And so in the chemical industry, I think some of the most inventive solutions have come from non-chemists and non-chemical engineers. It's having people that can translate across both sides. And I know at Cresilon, Joe has done the same. Joe's co-founder, Isaac, who he mentioned, he met at the Stern business competition meetup. They were matched together almost like at a dating app. It was speed dating, because they were trying to find a way for him to come in with his idea that was highly technical, that someone could understand and mirror back and say, wait, what are you talking about? A goop? A hummus? What does this mean?
Exactly. And at Cresilon, we hire from diverse backgrounds, right? And so if you have a company of just engineers, the coffee machine will work, but everything else will fall apart. And so we have a very diverse group of backgrounds. We even hire mechanical engineers here.
We started the program this evening with a video, and we're going to end the formal part of this program with another video. So we wanted to see Joe and Nash the now. So would you get the link?
TraumaGel. TraumaGel. TraumaGel.
It's called TraumaGel, and it's a plant-based agent that is designed to control bleeding.
Cobb County Fire and Rescue was one of the 6 departments across the country chosen to take part in the clinical trial.
The department also made history by becoming the first to use it on a fellow first responder.
Cobb County leaders say tools like this are game changers in saving lives.
I think I was at my 3rd station when they're calling me. We already used it. I was like, what?
We got trained on it at lunch and used it by dinner. It was very easy to use. It stood out as a game changer.
If it wasn't for this type of technology, we don't know what the outcome would have been. My name is Joe Landolina. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Cresilon, which is the company that has developed TraumaGel. TraumaGel is a plant-based hemostatic medical device that controls traumatic external bleeding in seconds. Over the last 15 years, Cresilon has grown from 2 guys in a dorm room into about 100 employees that operate in 34 countries across the world. The mission of saving lives was what Cresilon was founded for. I'm just an engineer. We make this product in order to help the paramedics, help doctors, help trauma surgeons, help EMTs be able to save patients' lives and stop bleeding quickly in the field. Here in Cobb County, we had the very first case of a first responder being treated with TraumaGel himself.
So it used to be in the past, our first go-to would be direct pressure and then of course tourniquet use. When we discovered your guys' product, we're talking about seconds. You're talking saving 5 to 7 minutes to get somebody out of a traumatic situation and on their way to definitive care.
I've been fortunate enough to actually see TraumaGel in action quite a few times, mainly in large lacerations or other penetrating traumas. The outcomes have been pretty impressive. If you have a distracting injury or a lack of hemostasis, TraumaGel can be quickly applied, and that can allow you to go through the stepwise approach of trauma management to ensure you're not missing anything.
You have an unstable patient, you have to do quicker, more invasive procedures. But if I have somebody who has hemostatic control, we have time to gather more information, address additional injuries, make better decisions about their care.
Our medical operations team here in Cobb County is on standby 24 hours a day to respond to some of the most unfortunate events that we have to prepare for in the county. Having a tool that's easy to deploy, that can stop a life-threatening bleed, is something that we feel can be really useful.
We've used our cases in low light situations. We've also used them in pouring down rain. We've had several head lacerations, multiple stabbings. We've also used them on dog bites. As long as you can feel where the wound is, it's so malleable, it's able to traverse that geometry of the wound.
I think what stood out most to me was, one, how quick it was to just learn how to use it, and then also just how quick it was to completely stop bleeding.
It worked super fast, so a lot faster than anything else I've ever used. Of course, with just regular gauze, I'd have blood everywhere, and actually the TraumaGel did not bleed through.
You literally just apply it, wrap it, and that's it.
When we have this type of technology available to us, it's not only for the citizens, but it's for us here. Also, those who are serving the citizens. And so I couldn't be more proud of our department right now. Just wanted to say thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you. For many, many years, this has been stick to tradition. Hopefully, it's a step in the right direction.
Thank you for your time.
And I, again, really thank you for making us feel so much at home and for, again, all that you do to make this place a better world. Thank you.